Judge Harold Thompson had been presiding over cases in the small town of Willowbrook for years. It was a quiet place where everyone knew everyone in the courthouse, was a place of routine for him. Each day was filled with similar cases, people getting fines for minor violations, traffic offenses, speeding tickets, and the occasional dispute over property or business disagreements. It was all so familiar that Judge Thompson could almost predict the outcome of each hearing without much thought. It was the kind of job that left him content yet rarely challenged him in any way. That was until Cassandra Williams walked into the courtroom. Cassandra appeared with a calm demeanor, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she had been here before, yet there was something about her that intrigued him, something different about the way she carried herself. She was a black woman, perhaps in her early 40s, with short black hair that framed her face in a simple yet elegant way. Her clothes were modest, not flashy, but well put together. She looked like any other person who might appear for a minor traffic violation. Yet Judge Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to her than met the eye. She stood before him, quietly waiting for him to speak, with a look of composure that suggested she wasn't bothered by the situation, even though she was there to answer for her offense. It was as if she had learned long ago how to navigate these spaces with grace and poise. Something about her made the judge curious, not just about her case, but about who she really was. He glanced at the paperwork before him. It was a routine speeding ticket, one of those cases he could close with a few clicks of the pen. But something told him there was more to it than just this. He asked her how she had come to be in the situation, and she explained without hesitation that it had been an honest mistake. She had been late for an appointment and had not realized how fast she was driving. The judge nodded and continued to review her record. She had no previous violations, no criminal history, and had always paid her fines on time. It was clear from the paperwork that she was an upstanding citizen, with no reason to be in trouble. She had no criminal history, no prior offenses, nothing that would have suggested any form of misconduct. So why had she been in his courtroom that day? He glanced at her once more. The calm in her eyes, the certainty in her voice, made him wonder if he had misjudged her. It was a minor violation, but something about this woman seemed to hold more depth than a simple speeding ticket. He sighed and decided to issue a fine in line with standard protocol. But there was still something nagging at him, something that told him this case was not as simple as it appeared. And as he gave the order for her to pay the fine, he couldn't help but wonder who Cassandra Williams really was and how she had come to be in his courtroom. As Cassandra turned and walked out of the room, the judge felt an odd sense of curiosity growing within him. He had dealt with hundreds of cases over the years, but there was something about this woman that lingered in his mind like an unanswered question. He didn't know it yet, but this would not be the last time he thought about her. Her story was only just beginning to unfold. This continuation builds intrigue, character depth, and sets the stage for future revelations, all while keeping the reader hooked. Cassandra Williams' thrift store, tucked away on the quieter side of Willowbrook, had been a staple in the community for over a decade. The small shop, with its faded sign and warm, welcoming window displays, appeared as though it had been frozen in time, much like the antiques and vintage goods lining the shelves inside. The locals often referred to it as Cassandra's Corner, a cozy little haven where people could find everything from gently used clothing to quirky knickknacks. To the casual observer, it looked like the kind of humble shop that thrived on local foot traffic and word of mouth. But beneath the surface, Cassandra's store was anything but ordinary. While most people saw it as a quaint second-hand shop, Cassandra had spent years curating a collection of rare and valuable items, often acquiring them from estate sales, auctions, and flea markets in towns far and wide. Her knowledge of antiques was unparalleled, and over the years she had developed an eye for spotting hidden treasures among piles of forgotten goods. What the townspeople didn't realize was that these seemingly mundane objects, old porcelain figurines, dusty furniture, and tattered books, held tremendous value. Cassandra never boasted about her success. She didn't need to. The shop had grown steadily over the years, with some items turning into small fortunes. She was known for her integrity, always offering fair prices to customers, but she also had a secret. She was an expert at reselling valuable antiques to a select network of collectors. These collectors didn't know that the source of their prized possessions was a quiet shop in Willowbrook. Cassandra preferred it that way. She liked keeping her work behind the scenes, away from the public eye. It was her passion, not just for antiques, but for the thrill of finding and rediscovering items with a history and value that others overlooked. Most of the people who came to her shop were regulars, some stopping in to donate items they no longer needed, others looking for bargains to furnish their homes. But a few times a year, there were people who came with something truly special. Old family heirlooms, paintings from forgotten artists, jewelry that had been hidden away for generations. These were the moments that Cassandra lived for. It was when she'd come across an item like this that she knew she had struck gold, though no one else in town would ever understand how or why she was able to find such treasures. To the outside world, Cassandra was the quiet shopkeeper who greeted every customer with a smile and a story. But inside her, there was a quiet confidence that had taken years to build. She had learned to trust her instincts and had built a reputation for being someone who could spot value when others couldn't. What many didn't realize was that Cassandra's shop wasn't her only source of wealth. Over the years, she had slowly acquired real estate in the town, investing in properties that were considered rundown or forgotten, and with each one, she had seen its potential for growth. These properties, though modest, were steadily appreciating in value, adding to her growing fortune. Despite her success, Cassandra was content to remain under the radar. She didn't want her wealth to change the way people viewed her. In a town like Willowbrook, people tended to stick to their roles, and Cassandra liked her role as the friendly shopkeeper who could always be counted on for a good deal. Little did anyone know, the shop that seemed so ordinary was actually the key to a much larger, much more lucrative story. And as Judge Thompson would soon discover, Cassandra's life was far more than what he had seen in the courtroom. The quiet shopkeeper was, in fact, a woman with a carefully crafted empire, a woman who had built her wealth with patience, knowledge, and an eye for opportunity. This continuation deepens the intrigue around Cassandra's character, highlighting the contrast between her humble exterior and the hidden layers of her success. It builds anticipation for the eventual revelation of her true wealth. Judge Harold Thompson could not shake the feeling that something was different about Cassandra Williams. After the hearing, his thoughts kept circling back to her. There was something about her calm demeanor, her quiet confidence, that made him wonder if there was more to the woman standing before him than what he had initially assumed. He had seen countless individuals come through his courtroom, most of them simply going through the motions, offering little more than a few words of apology or explanation. But Cassandra was different. Her words had been measured and sincere, yet there was a certain depth to her that he couldn't quite place. Determined to understand more, Judge Thompson began to look into her background. It was not uncommon for him to do a little research on cases that piqued his interest, though he knew this case was hardly noteworthy. It was a simple speeding violation after all. But something about the way Cassandra had conducted herself in the courtroom stirred a curiosity in him that went beyond professional duty. He began his inquiries discreetly, starting with her name. At first, there seemed to be very little to find. She was listed as the owner of a small thrift store in Willowbrook, a simple, no-frills business. Her record was clean, with no criminal history, no complaints, nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, as Judge Thompson dug deeper, he started to uncover small details that caught his attention. For one, Cassandra had been in town longer than he had initially assumed. Her store had been operating for over a decade, and while it wasn't a large chain, it was undeniably established within the community. But there was something else that intrigued him. Several properties in Willowbrook were registered under her name, properties that were not listed as businesses, but simply as land or homes. Why would someone with a small thrift store also own multiple properties? The more Judge Thompson uncovered, the more it became clear that Cassandra's financial situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. He learned that over the years, she had purchased properties in some of the less developed areas of town, places that others had overlooked, dismissed as too risky or unprofitable, but Cassandra had seen potential in them. She had transformed these seemingly run-down properties into well-maintained homes and rented them out, all while maintaining her low-key persona as the friendly, modest shopkeeper. The judge found himself impressed with her foresight and business acumen. Cassandra had been quietly building a small empire, investing in real estate and using her thrift store as both a front and a launching pad for her true wealth. The quiet woman who stood before him in court, the one who had appeared so unremarkable, was actually a savvy businesswoman with a portfolio of investments that most people would envy. Judge Thompson's mind raced. How had he missed all of this? How had someone like Cassandra managed to fly under the radar for so long, building a fortune without drawing attention to herself? He had always thought of her as just another small-town shopkeeper, but now he was beginning to see a much bigger picture. He began to wonder if there was something more to her story. How had she started this journey? What had motivated her to take risks when others played it safe? Judge Thompson had learned long ago not to make assumptions about people, but he realized that he had fallen into the trap of doing so with Cassandra. He had seen her as nothing more than a woman with a speeding ticket, a minor violation in the grand scheme of things. But now he was beginning to understand that she was far more than that. And the more he learned, the more he realized that there were layers to Cassandra's life that few had seen, layers that were about to be revealed in ways he never could have imagined. This continuation builds the judge's growing fascination with Cassandra, creating tension as he uncovers more about her life and wealth. It also hints at the depth of her story, which will be further revealed as the narrative progresses. Judge Harold Thompson couldn't stop thinking about what he had uncovered. The more he learned about Cassandra Williams, the more he was astounded by her ability to fly under the radar. He had expected her to be just another person with a few small assets, maybe a home, perhaps a small business. But the reality was far different. He had discovered that Cassandra's thrift store, the one he had thought was just a modest, small-town establishment, was merely the tip of the iceberg. Her real wealth lay in her investment savvy. For years, Cassandra had been purchasing rundown properties scattered across Willowbrook, properties that most people wouldn't have given a second glance. These homes were in areas that had long been ignored, where other investors saw only decay and decline. But not Cassandra. She had seen potential where others saw failure, and she had turned these forgotten houses into charming, well-maintained homes, perfect for renting out to families who appreciated the low cost and the quiet, cozy neighborhood. She had quietly built a real estate empire, one property at a time. But her investments didn't stop there. Judge Thompson soon learned that Cassandra had a keen eye for antique furniture, rare collectibles, and hidden treasures. Over the years, she had traveled across the state, attending estate sales, flea markets, and auctions, often walking away with items that others had overlooked. It was in these treasures, the dusty furniture, vintage paintings, rare books, and fine china, that Cassandra had truly found her fortune. What amazed the judge was that, unlike many business people he had known, Cassandra never flaunted her wealth. She didn't drive an expensive car, nor did she live in a mansion. Instead, she had always chosen to keep a low profile, focusing on what mattered most to her: her business, her community, and her family. The judge, who had once assumed her store was nothing more than a humble livelihood, now understood that Cassandra was not only financially successful, but also incredibly strategic in her decisions. What struck him the most was how Cassandra had quietly cultivated a reputation as a respected businesswoman, both in the real estate world and among collectors. Through her thrift store, she had networked with antique dealers, art collectors, and estate managers, people who had unknowingly helped her grow her collection of valuable items. What the community had seen as just a small shop was in fact a well-positioned front for a sophisticated business empire. Judge Thompson felt both admiration and guilt. He realized how much he had misjudged Cassandra. When she had first stood before him in the courtroom, he had seen her simply as a woman with a small fine to pay. He had assumed she was just another modest shopkeeper, perhaps struggling to make ends meet. But now he understood that she was a woman who had worked tirelessly over the years, carefully building a wealth of knowledge, skill, and resources. Cassandra had done all of this without the need for recognition. She had built her wealth slowly, strategically, and with purpose. And yet she had chosen to remain humble, to live a quiet life while making an impact on the town in ways few could see. The more the judge learned about her, the more he began to feel a sense of responsibility to understand her better, to learn from her, and to perhaps even find a way to bridge the gap between the assumptions he had made and the woman he was now discovering. Determined to learn more, Judge Thompson decided he needed to speak with Cassandra directly. He had questions that only she could answer. How did she manage to stay so grounded, so invisible despite her immense success? How had she avoided the spotlight, yet still built such an impressive legacy? He wasn't sure if he could find the answers on his own, but he knew one thing. Cassandra Williams was no ordinary woman, and he couldn't wait to find out more about the life she had carefully crafted behind the scenes. This continuation expands on Cassandra's hidden life, further detailing how she amassed her wealth through strategic real estate investments and antique dealings. It also highlights the growing realization the judge has about her, building up to the pivotal moment when he decides to meet her in person. Judge Thompson knew that to fully understand Cassandra Williams, he needed to meet her outside the courtroom. He had done all the research he could, but there was still so much he didn't know. How had a woman with such humility managed to build such an empire? Why had she never shared her story with anyone? These questions lingered in his mind as he made his way to Cassandra's shop, determined to finally uncover the woman behind the business. When he entered her thrift store, he was greeted by the familiar scent of old wood and polished furniture, the same comforting atmosphere that had made the store a favorite of Willowbrook's residents. The soft hum of a vintage jukebox played in the background, creating an atmosphere of quiet nostalgia. Cassandra was behind the counter, her warm smile lighting up the room as she greeted him. She seemed just as calm and poised as she had been in court, and for a moment, Judge Thompson wondered if he had been imagining things all along. Was she really the quiet, modest woman he had uncovered, or was he overestimating her story? "Judge Thompson, what brings you here today?" she asked, her tone pleasant and welcoming. "I've been thinking a lot about our last meeting," the judge said, taking a seat near the counter. "And I wanted to understand more about you. Your story, I mean. You've been here for a long time, building something impressive without anyone really knowing about it. I'd like to learn more." Cassandra paused, as if considering his words. Then, with a small smile, she said, "I suppose it's not a story most people would find interesting. I've never been one to seek attention or fame. I've just done what I love." "Which is?" the judge asked, leaning forward, genuinely curious now. "Finding beauty in things others discard," Cassandra said, her eyes lighting up. "My store started with a simple idea, to give people a place to find treasures. But what I realized over time is that it's not just about the objects. It's about the stories behind them, the memories they hold, and the people who find new purpose in them." Judge Thompson was struck by the way she spoke, not of wealth or success, but of passion and purpose. He had assumed her life was all about money, about building something for herself. But here she was, speaking of something far deeper, something that had nothing to do with what most people valued. It was clear that Cassandra's business wasn't just a way to make a living. It was a way for her to connect with others, to give new life to old things, and to create a sense of community in a town that often felt forgotten. "What about the properties?" the judge asked, curious about the real estate side of her empire. "I noticed you've invested in a lot of property around town. How did you come to make those decisions?" Cassandra chuckled softly, her gaze turning thoughtful. "It wasn't always about investment. When I started, I bought these properties because I saw potential in them. A house or a building may look worn down or useless to some, but I see the bones, the history, the stories that were once told in those walls. I just wanted to give them a second chance. Some of them were nearly falling apart, but with time, care, and a little vision, they've become places people want to live. It's the same with the things I sell here. They just need someone to see them for what they truly are." Judge Thompson felt a wave of admiration for her. It wasn't just the business acumen or the wealth she had accumulated over the years. It was her ability to see the potential in people and things that others had discarded. In a way, she was doing the same thing for the town of Willowbrook that she had done for the items in her shop. breathing new life into something that had been forgotten or overlooked. "You've created something extraordinary, Cassandra," the judge said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "You've built a legacy without anyone even realizing it, and yet you remain so humble, so grounded." Cassandra smiled softly, her eyes reflecting a quiet wisdom. "I never wanted to be seen as extraordinary. I just wanted to do what I love. The wealth came along the way, but it was never the goal. I've always believed that true success is about making a difference, no matter how small. That's what drives me." The judge sat back, absorbing her words. He had always defined success by the numbers, by the amount of wealth or status one could accumulate. But Cassandra had shown him a different path, one defined by passion, purpose, and a commitment to giving back. It was a lesson he would carry with him long after their conversation ended. As he left the shop later that day, the judge felt a renewed sense of clarity. Cassandra had shown him that true success wasn't about what one owned or how much money they made. It was about the impact they had on the world and the people around them. He had walked into her store expecting to find a story of business savvy and financial triumph, but instead, he had discovered a story of heart and soul, a story that was just as valuable, if not more so, than any fortune. This continuation deepens the emotional connection between the judge and Cassandra, showcasing her values, humility, and vision, while also expanding on the impact she's had on her community. The judge's perspective shifts as he begins to realize that Cassandra's true wealth lies not in material goods, but in her values and the positive changes she's made in the world. The days following his meeting with Cassandra Williams lingered in Judge Harold Thompson's mind. He had always believed that the measure of a person's success was found in their wealth, status, or the number of accolades they had amassed over the years. But Cassandra had shattered that notion. She wasn't chasing money or recognition. She was chasing meaning, creating value where others saw none, and leaving a positive impact on Willowbrook in ways he had never fully appreciated. He found himself thinking back to their conversation in the shop, how she spoke of giving new life to forgotten things, how she saw potential in places and objects that others overlooked. It wasn't just her business skills that fascinated him. It was the depth of her character, the way she seemed to live her life with such purpose, without needing to prove anything to anyone. She had a quiet confidence, and it was that confidence that made her even more impressive in his eyes. The more Judge Thompson thought about it, the more he realized that Willowbrook needed people like Cassandra. The town was small, its economy dependent on a handful of local businesses, none of which had truly flourished in recent years. While the world outside moved forward, Willowbrook seemed to be stuck in time, clinging to old traditions without much hope for the future. But Cassandra, without trying to change anything outwardly, was doing something to make Willowbrook better. She had revitalized homes, offered a place for people to buy quality goods, and most importantly, had brought a sense of pride back to the community. It was then that the idea began to form in his mind. The town was in the midst of a slow economic decline, but there was talk of a new project, a development plan to revitalize the downtown area. However, the project had stalled. There was resistance from residents who feared change, reluctance from investors who didn't see the town as a worthwhile venture, and a general sense of uncertainty about whether it could truly succeed. Judge Thompson knew that someone like Cassandra could be the key to moving the project forward. She had the vision, the knowledge, and the quiet influence necessary to bring people together, to show them what was possible when they looked beyond what was right in front of them. She didn't just sell antiques or restore homes, she restored hope, and that was what Willowbrook needed most. That afternoon, he made a decision. He would approach her with an idea, an opportunity for her to expand her influence and help Willowbrook thrive in ways she hadn't yet considered. He wasn't sure she would be interested, but there was no harm in asking. The next day, Judge Thompson drove to Cassandra's shop once more. As he entered, he was greeted by the familiar warmth of the place, the same calm atmosphere that had made her store a refuge for the community. She was busy helping a customer, but when she saw him, she smiled and excused herself. "Judge Thompson, it's good to see you again. What brings you by today?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I've been thinking," he began, pausing for a moment, "about the future of this town. Willowbrook has so much potential, but it feels like we're stuck in a rut. I know there's been talk of the revitalization project, but it's stalled. People are hesitant, investors aren't convinced, and we need someone who can bring people together, someone who can show them what's possible." Cassandra's expression softened as she listened, her eyes reflecting a curiosity that matched his own. "I don't know if I'm the right person for something that big," she said, glancing around her shop as if unsure how she could fit into such a vision. "You're exactly the right person," Judge Thompson replied, his voice earnest. "You've already done it on a smaller scale, Cassandra. You've turned this town around in ways people don't even realize. You've transformed homes, restored treasures, and built relationships with the people here. What Willowbrook needs is someone who knows how to see potential, to breathe life into what others have left behind. That's what you've done with your store, and I believe you can do the same for this town." Cassandra was silent for a moment, considering his words. Then she let out a soft sigh. "I've always been content with what I've been doing. I never thought I could be a part of something larger than my store, but maybe you're right. Maybe I can help." Judge Thompson felt a surge of relief. "I believe you can. I'm not asking you to do this alone. You have the support of the town, of investors who are ready to give Willowbrook a second chance. You'd be the one to lead it, to show people what could be if we dared to dream again." Cassandra nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. She wasn't someone who rushed into decisions, but she could sense that this was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice steady. "But if I do this, it'll be because I believe in Willowbrook, and I believe in what we can become together." Judge Thompson left her shop that day feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while. He had given Cassandra a chance to change the course of the town's future, but he knew that the true catalyst for this transformation would be her. She had the power to unlock Willowbrook's potential in ways no one else could. This continuation shows how the judge begins to see Cassandra not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a catalyst for change in Willowbrook. Their conversation sparks a potential collaboration to revitalize the town, setting the stage for future developments. It highlights Cassandra's reluctance to step into a larger role while emphasizing the hope that she could lead the town into a brighter future. Over the next few days, Cassandra found herself reflecting on Judge Thompson's words. She had never considered herself a leader, nor had she ever wanted to be. Her life had been about quiet persistence, about small, meaningful actions that added up over time. The thrift store was her world, and she was content with it. But there was no denying the truth in the judge's suggestion. Willowbrook was at a crossroads. The town was slowly deteriorating, the small businesses struggling, and there was no sense of direction. For the first time, Cassandra found herself questioning whether she could make a difference beyond her own shop. As the sun set one evening, Cassandra walked through her store, her fingers grazing the edges of some of the most cherished antiques on the shelves. Each item, from the delicate porcelain teacups to the vintage lamps, held a history, a story that had been handed down over the years. They were not just objects. They were testaments to lives lived, to dreams and memories preserved. She had always seen herself as a caretaker of these pieces, finding new owners for them, preserving their value, and giving them a second life. Could she do the same for the town? Her mind wandered back to the rundown properties she had bought over the years. What had started as a way to create affordable housing for people who couldn't afford the rising rents had turned into something more, a way to restore the town's forgotten corners, a way to bring beauty back to spaces that had long been neglected. She had always believed in Willowbrook's potential. The town's charm had never been fully realized. She had seen the beauty in the crumbling houses, the forgotten storefronts, and the quiet streets, but it had always been a slow, deliberate process. She had never considered that it could be done on a larger scale. Judge Thompson had recognized something she hadn't, her ability to see potential where others saw decay. He was right. She had done it on a small scale with her shop and properties. Perhaps she could extend that vision to the entire town. But would it be worth the risk? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that there was something powerful in what she could offer. Not just her money or her influence, but her vision, her belief that Willowbrook could be beautiful again, that it could be a place people wanted to visit, to live, to thrive. Yet there was doubt too. She had always been an observer, someone who operated in the background, quietly doing her part. Stepping into a larger role felt like stepping into the unknown. Could she handle the pressure? What if she failed? Would she let down the very people she wanted to help? Her mind raced as she paced around the store, lost in thought. The quiet hum of the vintage jukebox in the corner of the room seemed to echo her inner conflict. But then, as she passed by the window, something outside caught her attention. She looked out over the town, the main street lined with small, tired buildings, the sidewalks cracked and overgrown with weeds, the empty storefronts that once held so much promise. There was a certain beauty in it, a beauty that was waiting to be revived. For the first time in days, Cassandra smiled. She knew that she couldn't do this alone, but she also knew that if anyone could help transform Willowbrook, it was her. The next morning, she called Judge Thompson. "I've thought about your proposal," Cassandra said when he answered the phone. "And I think I'm ready to try." Judge Thompson's voice was filled with quiet excitement. "Are you sure? This won't be easy, Cassandra. It will take time, effort, and a lot of collaboration." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "But Willowbrook deserves better, and I believe we can make it better. I'm ready to lead, but I'll need your help and the help of the people here." The judge's voice softened, full of respect. "You have it, every step of the way." Cassandra hung up the phone and looked out the window once more. There was still much to be done, but for the first time, she felt that something truly meaningful was within reach. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with obstacles, and there would be moments of doubt. But she no longer felt alone. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope not just for herself, but for the town she had always loved. In this continuation, Cassandra wrestles with her decision to take on a larger role in the revitalization of Willowbrook. Her internal conflict gives way to a realization that she has the ability to help the town, just as she has done with her properties and store. She makes the bold decision to step up, signaling the beginning of her journey to lead Willowbrook's transformation. The narrative sets the stage for what will come next, a collective effort to restore the town and its spirit. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Cassandra stepped into her new role. It wasn't easy, and at times, it felt overwhelming. But as she took her first steps toward revitalizing Willowbrook, she realized that the town's transformation didn't have to be a daunting task. It just had to start with a single idea, a vision, and the willingness to bring people together. Cassandra had learned the importance of community over the years. Her thrift store wasn't just a business. It had become a gathering place, a space where people connected, shared stories, and formed friendships. Now she needed to bring that same sense of unity to the entire town. But this time, it wasn't just about finding treasures in forgotten corners. It was about finding the potential in the people of Willowbrook. She began by reaching out to the local businesses, the ones that had been struggling, the ones that had once given the town its character but had slowly faded into the background. She knew that the revitalization of Willowbrook wouldn't happen without their involvement. They were the heartbeat of the town, and their support would be crucial to any success. At the first community meeting, Cassandra stood before a crowd of familiar faces, business owners, longtime residents, and a few new faces who had recently moved to the area. They all looked at her expectantly, waiting to hear what she had to say. Cassandra stood at the front, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I know that times have been tough," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Willowbrook has changed, and it's been hard for many of us. But I believe that we can make this town shine again, that we can breathe new life into it. I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing. We can't do this alone. It's going to take all of us, working together, supporting each other, and believing in the potential of our town." There was a pause. The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then, slowly, people began to speak up. One by one, the business owners shared their own struggles, their hopes for the future, and the challenges they faced. Some had been here for decades, and some were newcomers eager to make a mark. Cassandra listened carefully, taking notes, making sure everyone's voice was heard. She knew that the first step in rebuilding Willowbrook wasn't just about making decisions. It was about creating a sense of ownership, making everyone feel like they were part of something bigger. In the days that followed, Cassandra worked tirelessly, organizing volunteer efforts to clean up the downtown area, contacting local contractors to start restoring the buildings, and even securing small grants to fund the initial phases of the project. But she knew that it wasn't just about physical improvements. The true success of Willowbrook's revitalization would come from the people's willingness to invest in the town, not just financially, but emotionally. She held more meetings, gathering feedback, creating committees, and encouraging ideas from everyone in the community. There were moments of frustration, times when progress felt slow, and doubts that crept in, but Cassandra refused to give up. Every time she felt uncertain, she reminded herself of the potential she had seen in Willowbrook from the start. She reminded herself of how far she had come, how she had turned a small, humble shop into something that mattered to people. And slowly, the changes began. The buildings were restored, the streets were cleaned, and new businesses began to open, breathing new life into the downtown area. The once neglected storefronts started to fill with activity again. The energy in the town was palpable, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of excitement in the air. Judge Thompson, who had been watching the progress from the sidelines, couldn't help but be amazed. He had known from the beginning that Cassandra had something special, but now he could see the full extent of her vision. She had taken something that seemed impossible and made it a reality, bringing the community together and creating a sense of pride in Willowbrook that had been absent for far too long. One afternoon, as Cassandra stood in the middle of Main Street, watching a group of children laughing as they played in the newly renovated park, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had done it, not alone, but with the help of the town she loved. Willowbrook was no longer a forgotten corner of the world. It was a place of hope, of possibility, and of resilience. As she walked back to her store, her heart light, she couldn't help but smile. She had found the one thing she had been seeking all along, not just success, but purpose. And in the process, she had given Willowbrook the chance to thrive once more. In this final part, Cassandra leads the revitalization efforts in Willowbrook, bringing the community together and starting to see tangible progress. Her leadership and determination help restore not only the town's buildings but its spirit. The chapter concludes with a sense of accomplishment and hope as Cassandra realizes the true meaning of success, creating lasting change for her town and its people.